What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to LTL Podcast. It's Saturday evening or Saturday night, and it may be evening somewhere, it may be morning for a couple people. It's September 16th, 2023. We're back here on the live show. I have this one, this is episode 76. I've had this kind of on deck for a while. And again, we really got, I don't want to say distracted, but we really got into the Danilo Cavalcante escape inmate. I'm kind of chasing around that for about almost 50 hours of streaming. So these have been kind of waiting in the on deck. So I'm going to get into Michael Jackson, the lawsuit that was filed by Wade Robinson and James Safechuck. And this had to do essentially with the allegations that came out in 2019 when the Leaving Neverland, I wouldn't say special, I wouldn't say documentary, but I don't know really the word for it. I guess it would be a documentary, and it was about all the allegations of Michael Jackson, over the years, building this friendship with these young men at the time, and then essentially led into some abuse that they are claiming. So I thought this would be interesting because this came back up in the news media just a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to get into this. I know it's an extremely tough subject to get into, so it is a trigger warning for most people here. And, I get it. If you want to sit this one out, it's fine. If you're watching this live, please feel free to chat on the right side there. If not, you can come back and hit hashtag replay. I do want to let you know about some programming news that's coming up. Tomorrow, Sunday at noon, I'm going to have Dan Connors on. That was the gentleman that I was telling you about, the Dean Estates in Cranston, Rhode Island. 90 flood victims are displaced from their home, and the property owner only wanted to offer them a $500 gift card. There has been no help that I know of right now from the state and local government to help these people. These victims are some people that don't have much. They may be on some state assistance, so they have no place to go. So tomorrow at noon, I will have Dan on for an interview. He's going to tell us about the situation, what happened, about the meetings that he's had so far, about how he's rallying around his community, and where this is going from here. So we will hear from him tomorrow. That's a very, very important podcast to listen to tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow night at 8:30, I will be back reviewing all of the new information that'll be in the 48-hour Idaho special that is on. Actually, probably I think it's this evening it's on. I was going to watch it live, but I'd rather just review it when I have some time so I can pause it, review it, make some notes, and we'll be talking about that tomorrow. There's new information that has come out. So that would be tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. So let's get into this show here. We're going to talk about Michael Jackson. Now, look, I was a young kid. I was a young boy. I was a fan of Michael Jackson. I will lead this up to the audience this evening to make your determination. If you believe the two accusers, if you believe that Michael Jackson was involved in these allegations, I'll be honest with you. I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50 on it. And you can see me here in 1982. Here I am with the sunglasses. Just as Thriller came out, I got the glove. I got a glove on. You can see the glove. I was a huge fan. He was the biggest artist at the time. Huge. Thriller. I mean, I don't think there's a bad song on that album. Huge fan. So I'm about 50-50. I got to be honest. I'm 50-50 on this. I did watch the Leaving Neverland documentary. It was shocking. And it's very triggering. There's a lot of crazy stuff in that documentary. All right, let's bring up this article. Going to get a little refresh, and then I got 2 videos I'm going to pull up from PBS. And I'm not going to probably not read this whole thing. We'll just get a little bit of a refresher. Michael Jackson SA abuse lawsuit revived by appeals court. Los Angeles AP reports a California appeal court on Friday revived lawsuits from 2 men who alleged Michael Jackson abused them for years when they were boys. And this was back on August 18th. So we're about a month ahead now. Like I said, I've had this on deck. A 3-judge panel from California's Second District Court of Appeal found that the lawsuits of Wade Robinson or Robson and James Safechuck should not have been dismissed by a lower court, and that the men can vitally claim that the 2 Jackson-owned corporations that were named as defendants in the cases had a responsibility to protect them. A California law that temporarily broadens the scope of abuse cases enable the appeals court to restore them. It's the second time the lawsuits brought by Robson in 2013 and Safechuck the following year have brought back after dismissal. The 2 men became more widely known for telling their stories in a 2019 HBO documentary, Leaving Neverland. A judge who dismissed the lawsuits in 2021 found that the corporations of MJJ Production Inc. and MJJ Ventures Inc. cannot be explicit to function like the Boy Scouts or church, where a child in their care could expect their protection. Jackson, who died in 2009, was the sole owner and only shareholder in the companies. All right, so that's going to get a little bit of a review. What I want to do is go back to the first interview with Wade and James, and this was on CBS this morning. It's about 29 minutes. This will give you some review, and this came out right after the Leaving Neverland documentary. I do want to warn everybody that this may be triggering, so if you need to sit this one out, it's fine. And then what we're going to do is get caught up by court TV as to what modern, where we stand in this case right now. So let's get some review. Let's listen to this.
Before you all met Michael Jackson, what did he mean to you?
So I first became aware of Michael Jackson when I was about 2. And I saw the making of Thriller and just instantly became obsessed with it and wanted to watch it all day, every day, and started doing the dance moves as soon as I could, walk properly. And then quickly my walls were plastered with, images of Michael, and he was just this absolutely incredible, otherworldly figure to me that I wanted to be just like and I dressed like him every day and did my hair and had my hair permed to look like him, and all that stuff.
I wasn't a huge fan before I met him, and then when I got the commercial, they did
Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, the Pepsi commercial. They did this thing where they would say every day that Michael's going to show up, but it was always his stand-in. So actually, in the commercial, when you see me meet him, is actually my first time seeing him, and at that point I was pretty excited, and so it was otherworldly, I guess. Or
that was it was one thing to meet him the first time when I was 5, and I ended up dancing with him in his show. He asked me to dance with him in the show the next night, and that was incredible. And we had a 2-hour hangout the next day with my mother in his hotel room. That was a whole nother level. Then we didn't have any contact for a couple of years, and then I met him again when I was 7. And this is when the so-called friendship began. Here I was, this little boy from Australia, who I was so enamored by him, so in love with him, such a huge fan. And now, within the first day or so, he's telling me that we were brought together by God, that we were meant to be together, that he wanted to be my friend, and he thought I was amazing. He thought I was so talented, and he thought I was so sweet, and he wanted to spend all of his time with me. So this feeling of being, the chosen one out of all the kids in the world.
You had to feel very special about that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For you, James?
Yeah, he's just quickly, very likable and engaging, and gives you focused attention. And he's disarming. He's a charming guy. And so you instantly feel very comfortable with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of bond and friendship develops quickly. And then he does start saying, "You're talented, you're special."
And him, the first night or so, teaching me the moonwalk, and so all these things that had been so surreal and from another planet on TV were now a part of my life. And Michael Jackson was my best friend, as he said.
Mm-hmm. He told you he would call you his best friend.
Yeah, within the first day or so.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like the best friend too, James?
Oh, for sure. It was very much you and him, sort of against the world kind of feeling. So yeah, you were very much best friends.
Did you two know each other as children?
No.
Did you two? Were you aware of each other as children?
I had seen the Pepsi commercial
Yeah.
that he was in. So I remember even seeing that commercial was like, that could be me, or that should be me. I wish that was me. But the only time I ever remember meeting James, or a couple times, was a little later when I was about 9 on the music video of Michael's Jam music video, which I danced in. And James was there with Michael as well. And we met then and hung out a little bit.
How do you go from Michael Jackson is an idol, we're friends, to now that friendship changes to what? How and when did it change?
So, the intense friendship with Michael started when I was about 7. Over the next 2 years, I still lived in Australia, and Michael would bring me out multiple times through those 2 years to spend time with him. So when we met the second time, when I was 7 years old, Michael invited us to Neverland that weekend. I think it was a Friday that we met initially. Talk about another planet. I mean, this was just the most magical thing I'd ever seen. Flowers and statues and lights and trees. Just
Ferris wheel.
Yeah, just incredible. And that first night, Michael, he kind of took us on a little bit of a tour, and he said to me and my sister, you can stay in one of the guest rooms, or you can stay in here with me if you want. And my reaction was, of course, I want to stay with you. And I think we all just kind of knocked out at some point. Nothing particular happened that night. We had one more night that way. And then the plan was the Monday that myself and my family were going to leave and go on another kind of vacation to the Grand Canyon.
So the thing that I have to say about this, and this is why I've been 50-50 on all of this, is that it's just the vivid account of recounting what happened. And when I listen to it, and I listen to them now, and I listen to what they said in the docuseries, their accounts haven't changed. And I always say this too, that, and believe me, there are people that lie about this stuff all the time. But I always say, like, things like this, it's got to come from somewhere. So either they're completely in on this together and just masters of remembering facts in vivid details, because that series on HBO got very graphic. I mean, there were extremely graphic detail down to like the T. So they're either fantastic storytellers and people that can remember, or they went through some trauma and they can remember all of this. So again, I'm still 50-50 on it. I wanted to kind of do this and see how you all felt. Right now, we have the chat at, do you believe Wade and James? We have 29% that say yes and 71% say no. All right. we'll keep playing through.
I was devastated to leave Michael. Michael was devastated for me to leave. He actually sobbed in front of me.
So you got to stay.
So I got to stay. And so it was just Michael and I in Neverland for the next week. And
your parents allowed that.
my parents allowed that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then within either the first or second night of Michael and I being alone at Neverland, the night started changing. And one of the ways I remember it starting is, Michael just sort of starting to touch my legs and touch my crotch over my pants. And then it kind of kept progressing from there. He would grab my hand and have him.
All right, fair enough. We'll redo the poll. That's fair enough. So let's redo it. I'll redo it. Fair enough. All right, so we have a yes, no. We'll add an unsure. Okay. New poll up if you want to vote. That'd be great.
Let me do the same thing to his crotch over his pants, and then it progressed to him performing oral sex on me, him showing me perform oral sex on him, him showing me how to French kiss.
Lots
Squeeze his
of
nipples.
trigger here. Lots of trigger warning. If this is too much for you, listen, we understand. Take the evening off. You can come back to another episode.
Did you know what was happening? Did you think that was inappropriate? Did it scare you? Did you think it was wrong?
A couple days prior to the abuse starting, Michael had already started he started touching me, just in the sense of like panned on my leg, lots of hugs, kissing my forehead, rubbing my hand. So there had been this kind of development of physical closeness that was happening already that felt like a father, just felt amazing.
Excuse me.
And
Very fair,
strangely
Mindy.
now, for me
Very
looking
fair.
back at it, when it went to the next furthest extreme of sexual contact, something about it felt like just the next step. And really quickly, as Michael started doing these sexual acts, he started talking to me about, God brought us together. We love each other, and this is how we
love each other.
We love each other,
Mhm.
and this is how we show each other our love. And then right away, the next part of the dialogue was, but if anybody else ever found out about any of this, you and I would go to jail for the rest of our lives. And we'd be pulled apart. Our lives would be over. Our careers would be over. We can't let that happen. We've got so much to do together. We've got to rule the world together.
Were you frightened by the actions or his words?
I was not frightened by the actions.
You were not. You did
No.
not think this is creepy. Don't
No.
touch me.
No,
This is wrong. You didn't think any of that.
No, I didn't think any of that. It was, out of all the kids in the world,
Right.
here I am. And Michael chose me. And he also told me that, I've never done this with anybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
James, you're nodding in agreement to what he's saying.
Yeah, all this
The conversation. Tell me what happened to you as you're listening to what Wade is saying. It clearly seems to resonate with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's all the same. He did the same thing to me as well. He introduced me to masturbation, and then you start kissing, and I'm on tour, so we're together 24/7, and it's happening over a period of time. And then you're kissing, and he said I taught him how to French kiss. And then it moves on to oral sex. It's like, can I kiss it? That kind of thing. That's what it starts with. But it's
Are you frightened or thinking this is weird or wrong?
No, it's in the context of a loving, close relationship. So
We're special friends.
Yeah, there's no alarm bells going off in your head or any thoughts like that. Really, it's just, I love this person, and we're trying to make each other happy. And he said I was his first. But even as a kid, you don't even know what that means. You don't even question it further than that.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know,
you don't say
still-
your first what.
Yeah, first what, right?
Yeah.
As an adult, you'd think
Yeah.
that, but as a kid, you're just like, oh,
Mhm.
that's great.
Mhm.
And you're special, and as well as we are not gay. We just love each other, and this is how you show your love.
He would say to you, "We're not gay."
Yeah.
Did you even know what that meant as a little kid? We're
Actually,
not gay.
yeah. I mean,
You did.
as soon as the abuse started, I had this question of, does this mean I'm gay now? That when the abuse started on tour.
Where did these things happen, and where are the adults who are supposed to be watching you?
So for me in the beginning, there was those first couple nights in the bedroom with my sister. Once she was out of the picture was when things changed, right? And my parents and my grandparents left for that next week at Neverland. So for that,
I would urge all this. I would all urge you, if you have the ability, you need to watch Leaving Neverland. It's a 2019 documentary. That's what these two gentlemen are featured in that documentary. And they say they had very close relationships with Michael Jackson, and that's where the abuse started. So if you haven't seen that, I urge everybody to watch it, because this will give you more context as to what's going on and what's going on in this lawsuit. This interview here was after that documentary was released. So what we're doing is just a little bit of review, and then we're going to get into what the present day, what's going on in the lawsuit. And Court TV had a segment on there, so we'll play that in a couple minutes. But we'll get through the rest of this about another 10 or 14 minutes.
at first
About another
week
14 minutes.
of abuse, they were in another, part of California.
And what about Michael's staff?
Well, the staff are everywhere.
Mhm.
Not in the room as
Yeah.
abuse is happening,
Mhm.
but before and after and around. And there's maids and there's cooks and there's security guards everywhere.
None of them appear to be concerned that you're staying in the room with him.
No,
No.
not that I witnessed.
James, where were the adults?
So when you're there, there's nobody else there. And on tour, my mom would stay in a different room, and I was in Michael's room the whole time. At Neverland, I think he kept us away, or kept me away from the maids. So, when they come around, you kind of try to go away. And I was
Just on that point, that was always a thing that I remember from the beginning. Michael always saying, "Do not talk to any of the staff.
for sure.
Not allowed to have friendships and talk about anything we say, anything we do."
Yeah, and even on tour, to go off that, if somebody else talked to you, he would notice, and then he'd question you. What did they say? What do they want? And he makes you fearful of talking to other people. And there's, when you're on tour, everybody's wanting to talk to you and
Right.
ask you questions. But
At what point did you all start to think that this is wrong? Was there ever a point that you started thinking this is wrong?
While the abuse was going on, so the abuse for me went from age 7 to 14 years old.
Well, I think
do
Mary,
remember when I was about
that's a fair point. And I think probably, they've now met as adults. I'm sure they've had conversations. They have an ongoing lawsuit together that's been, ongoing since 2019. So, that could be it too. I'm sure they've had conversations. They've had to probably have depositions, and sit in rooms and be questioned. So yeah, you would certainly get to know each other, from that. So
11 or 12, as I would see him less frequently.
again, I'm unsure about the whole thing, but that documentary is pretty telling.
Then when I would see him, it was still just kind of back to the old business, right? As soon as possible, as soon as we could get into a private space, if he wanted to do all the sexual stuff again. I remember feeling around 12, starting to be a little more uncomfortable about that, and sometimes maybe trying to change the subject or, distract, but then having a fear that if I don't do this, I'm already feeling like I'm not a favorite of Michael's anymore. And if I don't do this, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our friendship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were worried about losing the friendship.
Yeah. So it was a feeling like you need to do what he
Continue
wants.
this because you wanted to still be friends with him. The public in general thinks it's violent, that it's very painful, that it hurts. and that it's very scary. But what you're describing is totally the opposite of that.
Right. Yeah, that was the thing, is that the way Michael approached the abuse, the sexual activity with me, was always extremely tender, and again, began with hugs and embraces and kisses on the head, and then just kept expanding in that direction, but to a obviously much more twisted place.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was never, I mean, he didn't beat me, he didn't, he never said mean things to me. It was all, we love each other. It
Yeah.
was all tender.
He made
And
you feel special.
yeah,
You all both tell a very descriptive story about, sexual activity with Michael Jackson. He went to trial in 2005. He called on both of you to testify on his behalf. And Wade, you did. You got on the stand and you testified on his behalf and vehemently denied that any sexual activity had taken place.
yes.
Why did you do that?
Yeah, well, you know, Michael's training of me to testify began the first night that he started abusing me. In the sense that, as I told you, that right away after the first kind of experience of sexual abuse, he started telling me that if anybody else ever finds out, we'll both go to jail. Both of our lives will be over. We can't tell other people, this is what Michael would say, because other people are ignorant. They just wouldn't understand that this is how we show our love, right?
Why did you want to protect him? You loved him.
Because I loved him. And the thought of him going to jail was an unfathomable thought for me that would just terrified me. And so I was going to do anything I could do to protect my friend.
They credit your testimony in part for Michael's acquittal. You were called really a star witness. You withstood a blistering cross-examination. On some level, do you feel guilty about that now? Because another person who was making allegations, Michael Jackson was acquitted of what he was accused of doing to him.
Right.
Do you think about that, or did you think about it?
Yeah, I do think about that. I have, and I do. Gosh, I wish it was different. I wish that I was ready. I wish that I could have helped Gavin Arvizo receive some justice and some validation for what happened to him. It was just like what happened to me, and just like what happened to James. And I wish that I could have played a role in, at that point, stopping Michael from abusing however many other kids he did after that.
Yeah, you're both admitting to us that you did lie in the past. The Jackson family and Jackson fans, as you know, are adamantly defending him and saying that you all are admitted liars. You're trying to exploit him. He is no longer with us. You're just opportunistic and trying to get money from the estate and from Michael Jackson. What do you all say to that?
Well, there were, Mary, just in context of all that, there were other lawsuits that were settled. So, I mean, this goes back into like the 90s as well, too. Let's play a little bit more of this, and then I want to play the video from Court TV. Let's just hear to see what their answer is on the alleged early lying, and then we'll go into the Court TV.
It's an old argument that they've used for many, every time they come out with that. They say it's just about the money. For me, the lawsuit was about fighting back for little James. Nobody fought for me as a kid, but I'm old enough now to fight for myself. So win or lose, that doesn't matter. What matters is fighting. And so that's part of my process, my healing process.
I understand why that's hard for people to get, because it's really complex emotionally, psychologically. The way that this has evolved for me, after I fell apart emotionally in an explicit way with a couple of nervous breakdowns, which led to me disclosing the abuse for the first time to my therapist. Once I began talking about it after 22 years of silence, it initiated this kind of everything I'd been holding down for 22 years started coming out of me, right? This emotional and mental and physical upheaval. And then some point in that healing process, I would say, I don't know, maybe 9 months or so in, what started arising in me was this question first, how can I take this thing that happened to me, Michael abusing me, this horrible thing that happened to me, that shouldn't have happened to me, that shouldn't happen to any kid, but it did. So what can I do with it now? Right? How can I take this bad thing and try and turn it into something good for other people and for myself? So from that question arose this desire, how could I tell the truth, and where? What platform?
When I hear you, and you both are saying very similar things, that you want to help others, that you want to shine a light, and it sounds very noble. So there is still a potential of getting money from the Jackson estate. And they're saying that if you didn't have that looming, even as a possibility in the background, you would not be telling this story.
So in relation to...
That this is all about money is their bottom line here.
Right.
Especially Wade for you.
Right. In relation to me deciding to do the court case in the first place, it was all those reasons I spoke of, trying to find a platform. But that's the thing, trying to find what is the most powerful platform to tell my story. And the legal system is what we have, right? I could have just, gone and done interviews and that sort of thing, right? And it most likely would have been sensationalized and would have been all the buzz for a couple of weeks or a month, and then it's over. And what good would that have done?
All right, let's fast forward here ahead. We're going to go to Court TV. I think everybody's getting kind of a little bit of the review here, and this just recently came out on Court TV. Let's play through some of this here.
There was no bigger star in the world. Millions and millions of fans around the globe. His music was amazing. His dancing, spectacular. Michael Jackson was the king of pop. But along with his amazing talent was something else. A sometimes strange and bizarre personal life and an unusual connection with children. Something that for many years was innocently explained as a way for Michael to relive his own childhood that was stolen by his fame. But then came legal trouble, a civil settlement, and then a child molestation trial. The world watched and waited to see what would happen to the king of pop. He was found not guilty, and Michael Jackson moonwalked out of the courthouse a free man. Then, in the midst of a big comeback tour at just age 50, Michael died. And now, 14 years after his death, the estate of Michael Jackson is being sued by two former supporters of Jackson, alleging they were molested by Michael when they were children.
His kids are actually pretty productive now. Prince just did an interview with Mike Tyson on Mike Tyson's Hot Boxing. I just watched that like 2 days ago, and he still lives at the estate. And Paris, what is she doing now? She's with, do I say, who is she with? Let's see. She was hanging out with Macaulay Culkin for a little while, I think, but I don't know who else she's involved with now.
Tonight, we take a look at the allegations against Jackson with his former attorney,
They seem
Mark
pretty
Garagos,
normal.
and
Normal kids.
take a look at the legacy of Michael and his music with Perez Hilton.
Excuse me.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And the bottom line is Michael Jackson was an awesome entertainer. Sort of grew up listening to Michael Jackson because when I was a child,
we all did.
He was a child, and he was dancing and singing as a child with his brothers, the Jackson 5. They had the cartoons, and then Michael became bigger than any star anywhere. Right? He became the Elvis of my lifetime, which is why he called himself the king of pop, because Elvis was the king, right? So he's the king of pop. But just could entertain between the singing, the dancing, the performing, and just making everything bigger than life. I mean, that was such a big part of who he was. And we saw him grow up. You know, it started as a child, like this prodigy, and then blossomed as a young man. But then when he got really, really big, there was some really strange behavior associated with Michael Jackson. You know, there's a couple of things. One, the obvious surgeries that he was doing, you know, going out and dressing like Michael Jackson all the time, kind of not going incognito, always making everything big. You know, it's time for me to go shopping. I'm going to close down the store so I can take Brooke Shields shopping. Buying bones and doing all these things that kept him in the news. And you'd always wonder, right? Was he really this strange, or was it like part of publicity, right? They're talking about me. I'm the biggest star. I have to keep doing these things. Was it the fame that drove him to this strange behavior? It was never really 100% clear. But then there was the thing with the kids. Like, he used to walk around carrying Webster, and all of us, myself included, you know, we bought it, right? Michael Jackson as a kid didn't have a childhood. I mean, he was driven by his father and on the road performing and never had those moments. So now as an adult, he could enjoy those innocent, simple times with other children. Yeah, well, then the question became, when he started having all his legal troubles, is Michael Jackson good or bad, right? Think about this, right? You're the most popular star in the world, which means fans absolutely love and adore you. And we met a lot of these fans during the course of his trial on Court TV. But he had millions and millions and millions more around the globe. I mean, you're loved more than any other pop star in the world, on the one hand. On the other hand, you're accused of doing something that people who we detest the most in society do: molest children. So you have these two absolute extremes, like butting heads. Michael Jackson, is he like this great entertainer, pop star, philanthropist, does things for kids, or is he a child molester? You know, at first it was really shocking, absolutely shocking. Then the rumors of civil settlements, et cetera. And then it finally culminated in that criminal case that we covered on Court TV. Now, whether or not he's good or bad, we know what the jury said in that trial. They said there wasn't enough evidence to prove that. But these two guys who stood up for Michael Jackson initially, they say he's bad, that they are victims of his. And now they're going forward with a case. But as you know, Michael Jackson is no longer with us. He passed away 14 years ago. We saw that trial on Court TV as well, the trial of the doctor who killed him with the propofol. So let's go back in time a little bit, right? Let's go back, because these allegations become very public against the world's #1 star, Michael Jackson. So he produced this very simple video where he's speaking to the camera, but speaking to the world about the allegations. Take a look.
In the last few weeks, a large amount of ugly, malicious information has been released into the media about me. Apparently, this information was leaked through transcripts in a grand jury proceeding, where neither my lawyers nor I ever appeared. The information is disgusting.
Poor guy, man. He messed his face up so bad. Wow. Whew.
And false. Years ago, I allowed a family to visit and spend some time at Neverland. Neverland is my home. I allowed this family into my home because they told me their son was ill with cancer and needed my help. Through the years, I have helped thousands of children who are ill or in distress. These events have caused a nightmare for my family, my children, and me. I never intend to place myself in so vulnerable a position ever again. I love my community, and I have great faith in our justice system. Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court.
Crazy.
I deserve a fair trial like every
Chin,
other American citizen.
No,
I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told. Thank you.
And he was vindicated, right? The jury came back not guilty. And then I think many of the jurors went to the after party at Neverland after that trial.
yeah.
Now, as you
He
saw,
changed
right,
his
this is
notes
the
because
good and the
his dad
bad. Like, was he
was
someone who
really
was
bad.
helping families and children in need, or was he a child molester? I mean, extremes is the only way I can describe it.
Excuse me.
Now, one of the children who spent time with Michael Jackson was one of the gentlemen who we saw is now going after him, saying he was a victim. But that's not what he said as a child, nor what he said at Michael Jackson's trial. He was a supporter of Jackson, a witness testifying on behalf of Michael Jackson. The kids were there. It was all innocent. Take a listen. This is Wade Robson as a child speaking about Michael Jackson and what would happen at Neverland.
Yeah, you know, there's been different times where it'll just be me and Michael. Then there'll be other times where he has other friends over too. This is what, like what Brett said, it's just a slumber party. We just have a lot of fun.
So that's what he said as a child. That's what he said at the trial. But take a look now at what he said during Leaving Neverland. This is the 2019 HBO docuseries or documentary where Wade Robson and James Safechuck, the two guys now involved in this lawsuit we're going to talk about tonight, talk about what happened. Take a look.
Everybody wanted to meet Michael or be with Michael. And then he likes you.
I was 7 years old. Michael asked, do you and the family want to come to Neverland?
There's no thoughts of this is wrong or anything like that.
He told me if they ever found out what we were doing, he and I would go to jail for the rest of our lives. I want to be able to speak the truth as loud as I had to speak the lie.
So there, I mean, he concedes. Yeah, I said one thing at one point. I'm saying something completely different now. And now they have this lawsuit. But, you know, Michael Jackson passed away. At the time of that documentary, Michael Jackson was dead for 5 years when it came out. So let's try to get to the bottom of all this tonight during this hour. We've got some great guests coming up. Mark Garagos, Michael Jackson's former attorney, is going to join us. Perez Hilton is going to join us. But first, let's get some of the facts surrounding all of this. Great journalist joining us from Los Angeles, California. Associated Press reporter Andrew Dalton with us. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Vinny.
All right, so how would you explain this lawsuit? Like, how is it 14 years later that all of a sudden we've got these allegations against, you know, it's against Michael Jackson and I guess the people who worked for Michael Jackson, but Michael Jackson's not here to give his side of what happened. So what's this all about? How did we get to this spot?
Yeah, these lawsuits were initially filed 9 and 10 years ago, and they've been dismissed from court twice, almost 3 times. You know, the Jackson estate itself was dropped as a defendant in 2015. They were dismissed for being untimely in 2017, but there was a change to the law here in California where the statute of limitations was sort of reopened for child sex abuse cases. So there was this window where you could refile these things. So this lawsuit that had killed once came to life again. Then a judge dismissed it again in 2017, but last week here in California, an appeals court brought it back to life again. So it's had this incredible, ability to come back from the dead when it seemed like it was over. And so it's a good 10 years old now, but seems to finally be heading to trial.
So Wade Robson and James Safechuck have a history with Michael Jackson as children. They had a history with him at his criminal trial, but at one point they were on his side, right? And now they're saying, no, I was lying back then.
Yeah, that's really what the Jackson estate and its lawyers are really going to be dwelling on here. Wade Robson at the criminal trial, as you mentioned, testified to say that he had slept in Michael Jackson's room, slept in beds with them, and nothing ever happened. He was an adult at this time too. Robson was something like 23 years old at the time of the Jackson criminal trial, so this wasn't something he was saying as a child. And he praised Michael Jackson again at the time of his death in 2009. So, Jackson's folks are really dwelling on these statements. Robson said that it was when he finally became a father himself a couple of years later in 2013 that these feelings were bubbling up, the shame, the trauma were all coming up, and that finally prompted him to speak what he said was the truth he knew all along.
So Michael Jackson had a lot of people surrounding him, a lot of people working for him. So what was the dynamic here in these allegations, that people were enabling Michael or protecting Michael, that they all knew what was happening?
That's really the central issue here. Is there are these two corporations that Michael Jackson started, as many rich and famous people do, just for his personal business affairs. He was the owner. He was the lone shareholder of these companies, and they are the actual defendants in this lawsuit. So the argument and what the trial judge initially said was that it was incorrect for these guys and their families to think that these corporations had any duty to protect them, the way that the Boy Scouts or a church might, and that's the comparison that comes up a lot in these arguments. Jackson's lawyers are saying that basically, the lawsuits say that this company that essentially was Michael Jackson had a duty to protect these boys from Michael Jackson, and further beyond that these employees, the household staff, his personal assistants, anyone who worked for him had some responsibility to report what was going on to authorities or to somebody if they had any suspicion this was happening.
So let me ask you this. So the people who were working for Michael Jackson at the time, obviously not working for him anymore, not on his payroll, what do we expect all of them to potentially say about what was happening back then?
Well, if you look back to the criminal trial, there was household staff that said some very damning stuff. I mean, they were some of the most effective witnesses for the prosecution. Some that said they saw actual molestation happen, and not just sort of, the circumstances surrounding it that were conceded, with him sleeping in beds with boys and things like that. So they were definitely some key witnesses in that situation. The defense in that case said these are people that had sold these stories to, for a lot of money to tabloids before they were called to testify. But I mean, the central witnesses probably will be ending up being exactly those people. They will be the maids, the cooks, everyone who maintained that big house at Neverland. And you would expect some of them to give some similar testimony, some stuff that could be pretty damning.
So what do you expect the scene to be like? Right? You're out there in Los Angeles. You cover all these big cases for years. Michael Jackson obviously won't be there. I suspect there won't be any Jacksons there. Will there?
His brothers have been very supportive of him and all this. They are not really directly involved as far as being any part of the companies that are the defendants. They might show up to support him, and they certainly have been publicly vocal. They did interviews when this documentary came out, decrying these guys. And Wade Robson actually was married to the daughter of Jackie Jackson, the oldest member of the Jackson Five. So he had a family connection
to them
for a while. So there was they feel like they have an up close and personal knowledge of him, at least.
So do you expect this to be a big deal?
Well, it could be, for one thing, as we both sort of lament, they're very hesitant here in California the last several years, really ever since OJ, to let us have cameras inside. And, the trials that really get a footing are the ones that are that way. There's not going to be a famous defendant sitting there or even coming and going from the building, as there are in a lot of these cases. So I don't know that it will be a huge thing, but it will be, the first time in a long time that these allegations that are just bubbling will be really directly aired under oath. So, I mean, it certainly will get attention. And, as so many of these cases have been for Michael Jackson, it doesn't seem to be anything that really completely sinks him or makes people stop listening to his music, but it does just seem to be this persistent, undying, attention. This issue just keeps coming up again and again.
Yeah, and I mean, the world has changed a little bit, obviously, since the criminal trial. We had the big Me Too explosion, which I thought shifted things a little bit. It came back a little bit more to the middle now. How much do we know about Wade Robson and James Safechuck's lives? Have they been able to live somewhat normal lives? Have they been severely impacted? Because I remember covering one of the first priests that was ever put on trial, and all the victims of the Catholic Church showed up at the courthouse, and these were broken men. How would you describe Wade Robson and James Safechuck?
They've had fairly successful lives, just coming right out of the stuff that, Robson actually appeared in videos for Michael Jackson. I mean, his lawyers argue that he was an employee really of these companies. He went on to become a pretty prominent choreographer. He's worked with Britney Spears, with NSYNC, with people like that. So he kind of was thriving for a while. His attorneys said that he really, there really was that moment when he became a father, and that moment when he really kind of reflected on the things that had happened to him, that he really started, suffering and struggling then, that it was difficult for him to work. Jackson's lawyers are saying, this was a cash grab for some guys that were having money trouble. And in the case of Robson, at least, he was struggling at the time, but his attorneys say that the reason he was struggling was entirely because he was dealing with these things. Safechuck is much less of a public figure, and a lot less is known about him. He's worked in tech. He seems to have done okay, but he does say, he's had similar issues with PTSD and just suffering from the trauma of this.
Andrew Dalton, reporter for the Associated Press. Always great to get your insight and your reporting. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Vinny.
All right, folks. Coming up, we're going to bring in Mark Geragos, who's the attorney for Michael Jackson, former attorney for Michael Jackson. Some other attorneys get some insight into the way this is all going to play out. Also want to let you know, take a look here. You see the jury clock stopped in the Randolph case. Jury went home for the night. No verdict. Some of you are looking at that and saying, oh, is there a verdict? No. Tomorrow, Court TV, make sure you're watching. Tomorrow is Thursday, so I would say by Friday for sure. That's my guess. But the Randolph case, the jury's home for the night. So we got all that coming up, plus coming up next hour.
In Moscow, Idaho, the man accused of slaughtering 4 University of Idaho students back in court. We have all the details as we look ahead to his trial and the testimony of the surviving roommate who saw the killer.
How fitting, right into Idaho. I'm going to fast forward this so we can get up back to the Michael Jackson. Here we go. I will be doing a follow-up tomorrow on Idaho, tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with all of the new details and allegations that have come out. According to the 48-hour report that was just released, I believe it's being released probably right now. And then tomorrow, a very, 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 very important interview at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to have Dan Connors on. He's the gentleman in Rhode Island that has been displaced out of his home, and 90 other victims as well. The property owner offered them $500, and the state and the governor of Rhode Island has not done anything to help them. So he's going to be on to tell us his story so we can bring some awareness to that community, and hopefully that we can help them and get their story out. So we'll have more of that tomorrow. All right, let's finish this up about another 15 minutes or so, and we're going to close this one down for the evening. Thank you.
Only on Court TV.
He was the biggest star in the world, Michael Jackson. Fans loved him, even at a child molestation trial. Amazing the level of support he had throughout. And he was found not guilty. But now there's a lawsuit against It's sort of against Michael Jackson, but it's against some corporations and his estate because, as you know, Michael Jackson passed away. A big appellate decision came down that is permitting this case to go forward, a case that goes back 9-10 years. Take a look. Through attorneys, Jackson's corporations tell us today these protective measures were impossible or absurd because Michael Jackson would not have wanted to adopt them. I mean, he was the only one in charge. But corporations cannot escape their tort duties by saying those with power do not care about safety. It is the job of tort law to make them care. Okay, so what are they really talking about? They're talking about what happened or allegedly happened to two young boys, including Wade Robson. Take a look here. Here's a little sample of what these allegations are. Employees of the defendants witnessed the sexual abuse of Robson or circumstances suggesting sexual abuse. Defendant's security guard, Charlie Michael, saw Jackson put his hand on Robson's crotch area while they were on an amusement park rides at the Neverland Ranch. That's child molestation if it's true. That's what it is. No way around it. But this is a very unique, unusual, unorthodox lawsuit. So let's bring in some experts to help us tonight. Joining me in LA, Los Angeles, the criminal defense attorney who once represented Michael Jackson and many, many other people. Mark Garagos is with us. Great to see you, Mark. In Woodlands, California, celebrity trial attorney Chris Melcher is with us, but that's not him. That is, in New York City, former prosecutor who represented some of the U.S. women's gymnastics team against Larry Nassar. That's Judy Saunders. And Chris Melcher is probably coming up next, right? There he is, celebrity attorney. Great to see you. All right, everyone. Mark, let me begin with you. How would you describe this case/lawsuit?
Hello.
Did he freeze? Oh, that would have been the first time anyone in the history of the world was able to keep Mark Garagos from speaking. Oh, here we go. You're unfrozen now, Mark. I think we got you, right?
What a pause.
There was no way he's not going to speak. How would you just
had a rather
go ahead?
It's had a rather tortured history. I mean, it's as of right now, it
no
was
gag.
revived.
I'm going to make this very, very clear, Kathy. There's no gag on the family. There's no gag on the family. They are allowed to speak. The judge lifted the gag in that sense, so they can talk. They can talk. So there is no gag on the family. Let's make that clear. There's no gag on the family from talking.
Will by one of these look back laws that was passed here in California. And once it was revived, then there's been a back and forth as to whether or not
I have to watch it. I have to watch it review from my show. I have to watch it. So, and there's been some new startling allegations that have come out. It's chilling.
the corporation itself could be held liable for not exercising some kind of dominion and control over Michael Jackson. The argument by the Michael Jackson estate lawyers was, well, that makes no sense. He was the one who was in control of the corporation. He was the sole shareholder. You can't expect him to exercise dominion and control over himself. As you just quoted or excerpted from, he wasn't buying what the two judges at the trial level were ruling.
Close, isn't it,
and
Barry?
so they've revived it. It's
Crazy, huh?
because there's still, all they're saying at this point is it survives both the motion to dismiss and a summary judgment.
Sure.
And that means you get to a jury. So it'll be up to a jury to decide, did these things happen and were the employees who were testifying?
Yeah, so right now we have, do you believe James and Wade? 26% yes, 37% no, 37% unsure. It's crazy.
These things that you just described,
another
were they
8
accurate?
minutes and we're going to get out
Did
of
they
here.
see what they say they saw?
Yeah, I see. It's like you really have to prove two things. You have to prove that these things, Michael Jackson actually did them and other folks did nothing to stop it. Judy Saunders, let me ask you, can a jury believe these accusers, specifically Wade Robson, who testified at Michael Jackson's criminal trial on behalf of Michael Jackson and then when he became a father, suddenly, saw things differently. Can or will a jury believe him?
So thank you for having me. And in a spirit of accuracy, I was not involved in the Larry Nassar case, although I have represented hundreds of sexual abuse survivors and gymnasts. Can a jury or will a jury believe them? A jury can believe them. What we found and what so much of evidence and history shows us is that children can be groomed, they can be coerced, they can believe, they could not know at the time that they're talking about abuse that they are actually in the abuse, that they were actually abused. And I believe that it will be alleged that these two individuals, when they spoke out initially in support of Mr. Jackson, they were within the abuse. They didn't fully understand what was happening to them. And I think that if the attorneys fully explore that with the clients, there's a possibility that a jury could believe that that initial explanation about the abuse was not accurate. And actually what is being expressed now, they're fully grown, they're able to process, they're living with the trauma, they're living with the injuries. I think it's possible that a jury can believe these two individuals.
You look at what these allegations are. Let me go through a couple more here. One employee testified that it wasn't a secret that the kids were sleeping in Jackson's room with him, and another said everybody knew he did that. Defendant's security staff, and this one really takes you back a little bit, joked that Jackson did not have any girlfriends because he likes little boys. He likes little white butts. Security officer Ms. Michaels remembered Ms. Stakos commenting about Jackson's obsession with his little boyfriends. I mean, these are some, it's sick stuff, right? When in society, we look at child abusers as the worst of the worst. Michael Jackson was the most beloved celebrity entertainer in the world at the time. I mean, trying to make sense of this is difficult. But Chris Melcher, let me ask you, will this be a celebrity trial? I mean, it's going to be all about Michael Jackson, but would you consider it a celebrity trial?
Well, absolutely. And what's hard about it is Michael is not here to defend himself. And so these accusers just have free reign here to make these allegations. And with Robson, he decided to do that after Michael died. At the 2005 criminal trial in Santa Barbara, Robson testified.
Frage says, I saw a couple of channels saying they are thinking of looking at Maui. What do you mean thinking of looking at Maui? Explain a little bit more. What do you mean? Give me a little bit more detail. Can you tell me, what are you talking about? Oh, what's going on there? Yeah, of course. Who's saying that? What channels are saying that now? Tell me, name the channels. It's fine. Just put them in there. I probably have, I have a couple right on the top of my head right now. You can name them. It's fine. It's not many people in here tonight. I'd love to see who's gonna, I'm telling you, they wait to find what I'm gonna do, and then they just copy me. I have a few off the top of my head right now. I'm telling you, no one talked about it. And now all of a sudden that I've done it, they're like, oh, let's go over and take his material. I mean, granted, it's free reign to talk about it, but no one was talking about it. It's unbelievable. Now, give me the names. I want to see who it is. I have a few in my mind. All right, let's do another 3 minutes. We'll get this backed out, and then we'll chat a little bit.
And he's 22 years old back then. Okay, so he's a fully grown adult. He's had no contact really with Jackson at that point, so he wasn't under any kind of
JLR. I mean, listen. He's got a free pass, but he may go over there, which is great. I mean, he has the ability to travel. He does this full time. He can get boots on the ground coverage. I'd love to get in touch with some locals over there. I might try to reach out to some people, on some local channels that they have there. and try to talk to some of the locals. That would be great.
And the influence of Jackson, he testified.
Well,
Nothing
he has the
happened. There
ability
was
to do
no
that. I mean, he does YouTube full time. I don't have the ability to do that. I wish I did, but this channel just doesn't, generate enough money that I can do that. I only have 10,000 subscribers right now. It's going to take quite a long time to get me to that point.
no molestation, no sexual touching at all. And not only testified to that, but was cross-examined vigorously by a prosecutor. He had also been interviewed by police, by sheriffs, by FBI. I mean, there have been all kinds of interviews and protections. So if he was under some kind of fog of saying, wow, I just don't know as a 22-year-old what abuse even means, you figure by going through all those interviews that he would have learned. And he testified again under oath in a criminal trial that nothing happened. He gave a very touching statement after Michael died, showing his support for him. But then only after he died does he come through with these allegations. So I find no credibility to these statements.
Mark, do you think this is a fair case, considering that Michael is no longer alive?
No, I don't actually. I think that it's there's real problems with it. I would agree with your other panelists there. As someone who not only defended him, but not once but twice testified in that trial as well, I will tell you that he was an adult. He and Macaulay Culkin both testified in.
Yeah, I know. I know that, Janet. I gave him big props for that, and I appreciate that. And him and I have had a couple conversations. Oh, he mentioned it yesterday. I didn't hear that. What did he say, mind you? I just think it's funny because there were some people that were late to the game that got a lot more praise than I did. I thought that was just a little goofy. There was a lot of people out there praising some certain channels that were just super late to the game. I mean, I was on it right away. And I wish my channel got more reach because of that. But for some reason, I can't get this channel going as much as I want to. I don't know what YouTube just doesn't like my shit. I'm trying here. Oh, was he? That's cool. What did he say? What did he say, mind you? I'd like to just have him on and interview him because I think he's just a fascinating person. I'd love to see what makes his brain tick and how he does this. I've asked for an interview with him before, but he never really got back to me. And that's why I kept bugging him on his channel when he was doing the PA stuff. I'm like, all right, if he can do interview mode, I'm going to talk to him. And then his moderator was great. They said, drop the number and we'll get it to him. And he called right away. Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. It's going to be a while. But I don't know what it is. YouTube just doesn't like my stuff. I mean, it's I'm trying, you were even covering it before JLR got there. Yeah. But here's the advantage, people want to see you there, and I just don't have the ability to get up and travel. I can't do that like that. I have to have a job. I'm hoping I'm balancing towards getting away from having a full-time job. I'm making a transition right now. Where I'm taking a lesser, a less stress job. I am taking a bite in salary, but I believe and I hope it's going to free up some time for me to do more of this because this is what I want to do. But it's just tough. I can't make content daily. I can do one show. I'm at work. I work 40, 50 hours a week. So, and I can't stay up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning shooting, making content and, expect that I have to get up and work a regular job. So, I'm trying to do the best I can. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, listen, the Danilo stuff got me over 10,000, you know. I just wish I would have got more reach than I did. I mean, there was some channels I was watching, I was like, why is this specific channel getting 12, 15,000 viewers? And like, I felt like, you know, I'm being probably a little bit biased, but I thought on some of those days, you know, we were killing it for content. But it's like, I was watching some of the streams, they're just playing the local feed, don't even have their camera turned on, and supposedly 15,000 people watching that. I was like, okay. Not even interacting with the audience. So, oh yeah, I know you guys are here. I appreciate it. Absolutely, I appreciate it. All right, let's do this.
That trial, they both were, I think, convincing to the jurors.
I want to end this by
the
11.
jurors came out afterwards and were asked specifically about the testimony and believed it. It's you've got to be hard pressed now to say, well, what was it about that trial when it was just about Michael Jackson's liberty that you testified one way? Now that it's about your money in your pocket, you're testifying directly opposite. I mean, that's a real problem, I think, for most jurors. That's would be a problem, I think, even for a prosecutor to put somebody on after they have testified diametrically opposed and actually fawningly in the first place.
I'll take a look at a couple more of the allegations here. Defendant's employees were routinely sent to buy gifts and toys for Jackson's little friends using defendant's funds, including a credit card issued by MJJ Productions, which again is the corporation being sued here.
A lot of hard work.
Defendants implemented policies that allowed Jackson to be alone with children. Mistakos instructed security staff to keep your distance when Jackson had playtime with children in various areas of the Neverland Ranch. Staff were instructed to keep parents from children while the children were with Jackson. Parents were required to sleep in the guest quarters, not the main house. Defendant staff would take parents shopping or wine tasting away from the ranch when Jackson was there with a child. Judy, so you've got these types of allegations. It's really bizarre behavior. The criminal jury did not find evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, and they acquitted Michael Jackson. What are your thoughts about this type of behavior being described in 2023 in front of a jury versus years ago during the criminal trial?
You said it yourself. We are in a different era. We are in a Me Too era. We are in a Time's Up era that should have happened a long time ago. We also, jurors, the public, the culture is less blinded by idols, less blinded by the notions that celebrities can do no wrong. Now, what we do know is that Mr. Jackson can be both. He can be both a phenomenal, unbelievable musician, setting world records, and could have or may be liable for these allegations. So it doesn't have to be an either or. It can be and it could be both. Some of the things that you've read, some of the allegations, they're absolutely horrible. I believe when I listened to some of the information from the criminal juror, they were what they thought, what they talked about when they were interviewed. You can tell right away that those jurors, they set Mr. Jackson on a pedestal. It did not appear to be, from some of the jurors and what they had said, that they had really evaluated the evidence, that they had listened to the prosecutor's case. I think if they had, I think if the individual that was being tried at that original criminal trial was just an average citizen without the Michael and without the Jackson, you would have likely got a conviction. Those prosecutors would have gotten a conviction.
Chris, do you think the burden of proof here is going to make? Go ahead, Mark.
But that's where I have to disagree. I was intimately involved in the investigation for the 18 months leading up to the filing of charges.
Good night,
I investigated it thoroughly. In fact, one of the reasons I became a witness in the trial is because the count one I thought was directed more at me than it was at Michael Jackson. I have to tell you, the criminal trial did not revolve around these two accusers. The criminal trial revolved around another accuser, and I'll take issue with what your previous guest said. If his name was not Michael Jackson and it was Michael Fredrickson and he was a nobody, he never would have been charged. I took a look at that case. I met with Tom Sneddon, who was the then DA prior to him filing, and I said, this is a DA reject on anybody else's case. I don't even understand why you're considering filing this case. It makes absolutely no sense. So I take great issue with that. I do agree that we live in a completely different time than when this case was tried. I mean, it's light years what we understand now as opposed to what we understood back then. But in this particular case involving this particular accuser, I think I know the evidence as well as anybody, and I will tell you the jury did exactly what they should have done, which was to acquit him.
Mark Garagos, Judy
And
Saunders.
I expect there would be disagreement.
Yeah.
I expect
We're out
there to be
of time,
disagreement.
unfortunately,
You're
Judy.
interested-
We're out of time tonight. Mark did it to you. He filibustered you. You're out of time. But great to
That's
see
all
everyone
right. I
tonight.
expect disagreement from Mark.
Yeah, Mark, Judy, Chris Melcher, appreciate your
He's
time.
like, I gotta
tonight.
go.
We'll do it again. Thanks so much. When we come back, we're going to take a look at Michael Jackson. Is he still the king of pop?
All right. I don't really care too much more about that. So anyway, wanted to just get this in. I had this episode up, episode 76. It's been kind of in the can, waiting for a little while here to get going. But let's look at the poll results. Wow, what a mixed bag. Let's end it right now. The poll is at, do you believe James and Wade? 37% no, 37% unsure, and 25% yes. We had 67 votes. It's crazy, 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 crazy. All right, folks, I'm going to get going. I'm tired. Tomorrow, a very, very important interview tomorrow at 12 noon. I hope that you can make it there on that Sunday. It's very important. If not, please come back and watch it on replay. I'd like to get a crowd in front of that podcast because it's very important. It's a very important community outreach and community action. So it'd be nice if everybody can make it over for that. And then tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we go back to Idaho. We'll talk about the new 48-hour release about the Idaho murders. Now new information being put out and very chilling information. So we'll review that. Everybody get some sleep. I'll see y'all back here hopefully tomorrow at 12 noon if you can make it. Thanks for watching this episode of the LTL Podcast, episode 76 in the bank. And I'll see you guys all back tomorrow. Double deal combo meal tomorrow. I'll see y'all. Bye.